Hello and welcome everyone. Today we are so excited that we have Dr. Valdeane Brown with us. He's the co-founder of the NeurOptimal system. And today we want to talk about trainers and clients and the response to fear. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Many of us are finding that our beliefs and underlying fear are starting to kind of steer our actions and our thoughts. And we would like very much to get Val's thoughts on this, not only for our own personal offices, but just for our world in our own personal lives. You know, we see all of this on social media, and we see this in our life socially, where we're not able to be with family right now. And, you know, life is prolonged that way. We're seeing this more and more and for longer and longer periods of time. Val, you have a concept that you talk about that's called calm assertiveness. How do you gain calm assertiveness when the world is in such turmoil?
Well, actually, calm assertiveness is a borrowed term from Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. And his fundamental premise is that dogs read energy. You know, we may like to think they respond to language, but I remember that Gary Larson cartoon from a number of years ago where the owner's talking to the dog, you know, and it's like, now Spot, you know you're not supposed to do blah, 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 you know, all of that. Yeah. Now, be a good dog. And what the dog hears is, Spot, good dog. So,
Yes.
right, everything else gets deleted. But dogs read your energy. And so the whole idea is, in order to lead your pack, in order to you be the human, you be in charge. And in charge doesn't mean you're you know, being like an overseer of, you know, those beneath you. It just means you're the one who's directing what we're doing. What counts really is staying calm, because the dogs will follow you if you're being calm and clear, which is the assertive part, the clear. On the other hand, if you start getting afraid or anxious, exactly what you just did, where you kind of quickly look to the side, they're going to start looking around to see, okay, who's in charge now? And in the extreme, they will take charge. Because if no one else is taking charge, even if they're not alpha inherently, if that's not their proclivity, they know that any pack of dogs, any pack of family has to have someone who's in charge, and they'll take charge, which will definitely create problems, especially if they're not alpha. If they don't know how to direct, it's a real problem. So what's the point about calm assertiveness? Well, when you're dealing with a dog, it's very easy to go in concerned, like, oh, you know, the dog barks a lot. Oh gosh, how do I control that? What do I do? Well, as soon as you start going like that, the dog's going to pick that energy up and go, okay, I'm not sure what to do, but there's somebody coming. Maybe I better bark. And you create the problem or exacerbate it. So what's calm assertiveness in reference to just being human? Well, at a certain level, that's exactly what the whole message from the dog whisperer is you're the human, so be human. Now, part of us as humans and socialized humans, you know, we get this sense of what it means to, quote, be nice. And so frequently when you come upon a dog, particularly if it's a friend's dog and the friend is there, you kind of want to go, oh, what a cute dog, and lean in. And the dog is going to be thinking, what the hell's going on here? Because like, oh, this is not good, you know, and definitely look up to, you know, the owner to say, what's this about? Because the dog is going to protect the pack, right? So you as a human, these things we've been socialized to kind of do, which in human world, in human packs, has a whole lot of meaning, tends to make things more challenging or more difficult than they really need to be. So what's calm assertiveness really mean? Well, it depends what sort of tradition you come from, but a lot of places talk about centering, maintain your center. Some traditions talk about holding the space. You hold the space. You hold the space of safety. You are a container. Now, there are a lot of reasons that I don't like that language as well as the calm assertive, but I've kind of tagged on to calm assertive as a way of talking about what the Buddhist community talks about as compassion and empathy. So you are listening, you're interacting, and you're listening from a point of view of wanting to really understand the other person. You know, that's the so they feel understood as they understand themselves to be piece of the joining, right? And that requires you to be in a place of calmness, equanimity is another way to talk about it. Now, that doesn't mean that you're, absolutely flat emotionally. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that you're not reactive to what's being said. And sometimes being reactive can be very subtle. It can be when somebody's talking that you are just doing this, which really, from your perspective, means I'm listening. Mm-hmm. But unawarefully in most cultures, most human cultures, that means, yes, I agree with you. Mm. So it's very interesting how these things get socialized, how we think about it. So, so what's going on in calm assertiveness in the context of all this fear and sort of the beliefs about how life should be and what's wrong and who's at fault because it's not right, it's wrong, life is wrong. Well, I think the fundamental thing is to realize that fear, I've always talked about it as an acronym. So it's the fantasized experience of awful realities. Lots of people would say, well, I'm afraid of flying. It's like, no, you're not afraid of flying. So, well, the plane might crash. I said, yeah, you're afraid of crashing.
Exactly.
And what you do is show yourself in flight movies in which you're the central star and the plane goes down. And of course, you're going to respond to that fearfully because that's what the body does. It goes, oh, my God, this is happening, isn't it? On the other hand, if you can step back from that image and realize it's just a fantasy and there's phenomenally more evidence around that the plane is not crashing, an enormous amount of the time, pay attention to that. I remember one of our reps and instructors, a real long time friend and associate, just really wonderful person, was talking about how she was on an airplane once and there was a lot of turbulence happening. And the person next to her was starting to get really concerned. Well, at one point, I think it was her coffee cup or whatever flew up in the air, and she just reached out and grabbed it and took a sip and put it down, It's like, that's calm assertiveness.
Yes.
And you just do what's necessary and just keep going. So we're afraid. We fantasize these awful things. We fantasize, the country's falling apart. We fantasize the world is falling apart. We fantasize, the awful people, whoever we've been raised to believe the awful people are. The awful people are doing terrible things, and I can't handle this. It's too much. All of that is belief. All of that's belief. Because to the degree that somebody or some buddies are doing things, well, you can do things, to the degree that people are organizing in some way, you maybe disagree with it. First off, you could try to find out what it is that they're thinking. How come it seems like a good idea to them to organize around whatever that is? And then, well, that could be interesting. We walk in so often with our pre-assumed beliefs that we don't even hear what the other person is trying to say. And frequently they're operating out of a really deep, strong fear. So if
And
you're
those
not,
beliefs from someone else, I mean, those
Mhm.
beliefs that we have are
Yes,
really old stories we've told ourselves, experiences that we think we perceived in that way. So those beliefs are coming from probably a more uneducated place. Is that true? And then they're not looking at the facts or the information that's available now to them.
well, the thing about beliefs, and I think it's very good to talk about, acceptance of things not yet seen, not yet proven. A lot of different ways to talk about it. So it's frequently the case that what you perceive is largely because of your beliefs. So, you look at certain things that happen and you say, oh, that's because this terrible group has done X, Y, Z. And you have no direct knowledge of that.
So
You
we
know,
just try to make sense of it.
you try to make sense of what it is. And that's a large part of the way consciousness, human consciousness works. It's the way all consciousness works. The dog who is feeling unsafe in the group
Mhm.
tries to make sense out of what they're seeing. And instead of saying, oh, I guess my human is just a little anxious right now. Okay, I'll just wait, you know, which a human might well say, oh, my partner is anxious right now. That's okay. I can be
Mhm.
okay for right now. The dog just reacts much more unawarefully, species wise. And because they're always just right there in that moment. There's no lived history really in the same way that there is for us. It's just how it is. Um, so yeah, we've heard these stories mostly. It's not even necessarily that we experience them. It's more that they're things that get handed down, and it's just very interesting. One of my favorite humanist psychotherapists from back in the 60s, that was kind of the heyday of that crew, late 60s and into the 70s. Shelley Cobb, he was the guy who wrote the eschatological laundry list and you eat the Buddha on the road, kill him, and a variety of things. But he had these wonderful stories that he collected over the years, and tells the story of the woman that he knew, this young woman who was an adult but young, and she was about to make a ham, and she cut off the lower third of the ham to put it into a pan and then cook it. And he watched that and he went, well, why do you do that? And she said, I don't know. It's the way my mom always did it, so it's just what I do. Well, now he's intrigued. He happened to know the mother, so he runs into the mother. He goes, oh, I was with your daughter just a while ago, and she was there, cooking a ham, and she cut off the lower third and said that's the way that she had learned from you. That's what you always did. So why do you do it? And the mother thought for a moment and said, gee, I don't know. That's the way my mom always did it. So now he's really intrigued. So he knows the grandmother, and he goes to the grandmother and he goes,
Wow.
okay, I saw your granddaughter, and she cuts off the lower third of the ham when she goes to, and I asked her how come. She said, well, that's how my mom did it. I don't know why. And then I went to her mom, your daughter, and I said, okay, cut off the lower third. Why did you cut this? And she said, I didn't know. That's the way my mom. So now I'm coming to you saying, why do you cut off the lower third? She reached under the sink and pulled out this little pan. She said, otherwise it won't fit in the pan.
Oh, oh my
And
gosh.
that's frequently what happens. We get these things handed down, and they can be handed down lots of ways. I'm not trying to imply it's just family, but it's
Right.
everywhere. I've been a lifelong whatever. Well, okay, maybe you have, but maybe you can just even let go of that label and say what those things mean to you, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And how could you explain that? How could you share that with somebody without using that label? Because the label probably conceals more than it reveals, particularly about how you are incorporating that. So it gets to this whole thing of belief-driven identities, which are lived out of a past that no longer exists, is no longer relevant because now you have a bigger pan. It's like, so now does that mean you don't cut off the lower third? There may be another reason. There may be. You may find that it works much better, but at least now you can find out.
Excellent. So when we look at our trainers and we look at our end users or our clients that we have, and we look at our, everything that's going on, they come into our offices most of the time very nervous, upset, concerned with whatever they are dealing with in their life.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Many times they'll call them by a label, a diagnosis, or many times they'll call them by a symptom or express that information in a way that makes the trainer makes the trainer respond many times as though they have to kind of fix this problem.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at your calm assertiveness and we look at how to portray ourselves in a way that would possibly help a client feel more at ease. Obviously, we're not the master and the dog, but that does still apply. How is it that you see a trainer could possibly play that scenario out in their office to where they could help relieve some of that stress? Now, I do know, and we suggest always, and only because you and Sue have always said it, do your own sessions. Right. I do believe that it has helped all of us all the way down the line, no matter how many years we've been doing it. But is there any other kind of dialogue? Is there any other kind of stance? Is there any other kind of way we can portray that calm assertiveness within our offices?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. I think a fundamental place to start, though, is even in this idea of, do your own sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on the one level, that could be taken as cut off the lower third of the ham.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so what's the point of doing that? Well, a slightly larger pan maybe would be to say, well, because that'll take care of, reduce your anxiety. Well, that's still the same, cutting the lower third of the ham off. What's the real fundamental transformational reason to do your own sessions? So that you can live moment to moment in the experience of its actual value to you. Because we're fundamentally always sharing, offering experience. That experience may become transformational for particular people, and it may become transformational in the sense that they no longer feel anxious, or they feel less anxious, whatever that means for them, or they still feel anxious some, but they're actually enjoying it because it's a sign of they're actually going out and doing things, and it's really excitement that they're feeling. All of those could be the same experience, except how they're undergone. So you, as the trainer, you receive this client who comes in, this potential user, this person who is there for a session, presumably. Right. You offer what you know. But what you don't offer is, in 20 sessions, you'll no longer feel so anxious. Now, why do you not offer that? Number one, because you don't know that.
True. Yeah.
You don't know that in general. You don't know that they may not feel completely different after this very first session of using NeurOptimal. You may not know, and almost undoubtedly don't know, that after the 10th session, their partner dies and they get fired.
Right.
Oh, yeah, well, don't feel anxious. No, I don't think so. You know? Right? So, but you also don't know that even if you have 100,000 studies that are randomized clinical trials accepted by peer-reviewed journals, and you have a database of 300,000 in all of those, right? You still don't know what's going to happen for this particular person at this particular time with this particular session. You're not speaking out of your experience, you're speaking out of belief. Now you're doing it out of another belief. That second belief is this will reassure the client. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that sets up more challenge for everybody. I think it's far better to, in calm assertiveness, offer and say, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't tell you ahead of time.
Right.
So how about you try this and you let me know how it's going for you. You're the one who chose to come here.
Yes.
You'll know that this is useful for you or not. I'm here to answer all the questions that I can, and I'm here to do the best I can. All I know is this has been really helpful for me. This has been really helpful, useful, enriching for all of these people I've had interactions with, and with lots of people around the world. But we're all different, we're all unique. I can't tell you what's going to happen ahead of time, and I'm not even going to pretend.
And I love that one of the quotes that Sue says is that we're not here to fix anybody. We're here to offer the system. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, is that we are here to offer this, and we really do not know the results.
Exactly. And where that really becomes challenging, I think, on an individual basis, if I can say it that way, is for those trainers who have been trained themselves as helping professionals. Because virtually every helping profession has some form of code of ethics or practice standards that say things like, give all the information you can about what the intervention you're offering is and what its outcome is likely to be, and et cetera, et cetera. And I agree fully with that. It's just that in the case of this, what it means is we don't know. And let's find out. And being clear about that is what really is the best basis for informed consent, as opposed to saying, well, most of the time everybody finds that within X sessions, if it's this, then that. Now you've already started down that road of implying, even to some degree, that this is going to fix or change or make something different. Now, the truth is, the bottom line is that when you know something, you can't unknow it. When you experience it, you can't unexperience it. That's just the way things are. So at some point, someone may come back to you after a session and say, well, here's what happened. And then it becomes, well, do you want to do this again? Is that useful? Is that helpful? Well, convince me I should take more sessions. I'm not going to do that. I'm just not. That's me personally. Now, way back in the day in the early history, when the field as a whole was establishing itself, and a large thread in the field of neurofeedback was, we can really help with the following conditions. And the one that I always talk about that tended for a long time to get kicked to the curb was seizure control, which is actually where the field started. And, I've said all along, in my opinion, Carl Pribram should have gotten a Nobel Prize. But also, in this context, Barry Sturman should have gotten a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
But his discovery was just too far off the belief map of the rest of medical and psychological science at the time. I mean, people were still adamantly saying that, the brain never changes after 20s. Neuroplasticity didn't even exist as a word. Never mind, the concept's been obvious for a couple thousand years. All you have to do is look at the actual data. It's fundamentally clear that, that the brain does change just like the rest of the body, and it can grow and it can learn, and it's not like somehow that just goes away when you magically turn, 24.
And I think the whole topic of neuroplasticity is on a different Val's voice, because that's a good topic. We want to get into that one at some point.
Yeah.
It is a big one, isn't it? Yeah.
One.
So we want to make sure that we're able to cover that.
Segue to that at a different time. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You did bring up another point. It's not the fear and anxiety and stress that everyone has in the moment may not honestly be, for our trainers at least, may not honestly be for COVID and catching COVID, but it has really affected people's offices.
Yes.
And when you brought up the idea that you would suggest to someone, I'm not going to talk you into doing this. I know that many people have come to me, at least, and talked about the fear of not having people come in their offices right now, that they're not able to see people. So I would imagine that fear probably sometimes steers their ability to say, this is your journey. We want you to be in charge of your own ship, So is there any information you would like them to hear on that topic, that, the fear and the stress is kind of global? It's still a belief that they won't have more clients come in, but some gut-wrenching fear in the moment for life and being able to support their own family or themselves.
Yes, well, and that is a realistic point of energetic engagement in the body. The question is, does that get interpreted as fear? Oh my God, it's going to fall apart. It's going to be terrible. Or does that get interpreted as excitement? Good, now it's time to get going. Now it's time to do stuff. What can I do? And one of the fundamental things you can do is know inside and out for yourself the lived transformational value of NeurOptimal. It's a great time to do a session.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, if you don't use sessions for that kind of purpose for you, to continually reground you in this experience, what is it you're offering to people? Then you're trying to sell them something.
Yes,
you're
absolutely.
Trying to, and that's a whole different dynamic. I'm trying to sell you this because I need you to buy it. That's very different. And that most people are going to pick up, even if you're not consciously doing that. If unawarefully that's what you're putting out, I think people are going to pick that vibration up and respond to it and think, I don't know. We've all had that sense, I think, of this guy's trying to sell me very strongly. It's a high pressure sale. And I'm not suggesting that our trainers do that with people or have done that.
Of course not.
I don't mean to imply that, but my sense is to go as far away from that as possible.
Absolutely.
And I'll just, over the course of time, we'd have practitioners, now this is really back in the day, but we'd have practitioners come and say, okay, well, prove to me that what you do is better than what I've got. Prove it to me. And it's like, no. And if that's where you're coming from, it's probably not a good match. Oh, you mean you don't have the studies? I said, no, it's just that, I'd have the studies? I would do those studies? Because then what would be said is, well, of course it turned out good. You did the study. You're just trying to, it's like, I'm not going to do the studies. That's crazy. I remember once I was talking to Barry disturbance. At a conference, we were dialoguing as a panel in front. And I said to, Barry, you keep wondering like why I don't do research, and I said, in my opinion, you should have gotten the Nobel Prize. I said, your research, as problematic as you could say it was in some ways, was fundamentally paradigm shifting and shattering.
Mm-hmm.
And if your research at that level can't be accepted, what do I think? I'm going to do better? It's just interesting to me, because that's another good example of how belief driven a lot of things are. I've never said research doesn't matter, like forget it, don't do research, right? What I have said is research doesn't convince. The research comes along after.
Right.
Nobody goes to the circus to watch the guy walking behind, cleaning up behind the elephants. They go to watch the elephants. As problematic as that might be, research is like the guy coming along and cleaning up. The parade has already happened, and then the research comes. And I mean, we see it now in a positive way with COVID. It's a very good example. We have to have the research to know what's the real solution, what are the real approaches, what can we do proactively beyond masking, social distance, hand washing, those fundamental things that work effectively across virtually any infectious process.
Right.
So go with what you know, and it works, while the guy's coming behind the parade to try to clean everything up and go, okay, now we know what to do. Because that really does take time. And if you rush that process, you create far worse problems most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Val, thank you so much for talking to us about fear, anxiety, stress, not only in the world, but in our office and within ourselves. It really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to doing this again with you very soon.
Yes.
Great.
That would be good. Thanks.
Thank you.